The New York Knicks are now just 2 wins away from the NBA Finals, and they've ripped off 9 straight playoff wins. That's the longest postseason streak since the Celtics won 10 straight during their 2024 title run. And honestly, the wildest part is that Game 1 almost felt explainable at first. The Knicks were down 22 points, completely cooked, looking finished. Then Jalen Brunson exploded out of nowhere. Landry Shamet came alive, Cleveland totally fell apart, and the Cavs ended up choking away a game people still can't believe happened. That felt like the miracle game. But Game 2? Totally different story. No miracle, no lucky bounce, no chaos. The Knicks just looked like the stronger team from start to finish. Through these first 2 games, New York has already shown 3 different ways they can beat Cleveland, and the last one might be the biggest warning sign yet for the Cavs. The first way the Knicks attacked them was by flipping Cleveland's own defensive strategy right back in their face. And honestly, this whole thing starts with Josh Hart. From the opening minutes of Game 1, Cleveland made their plan obvious. They were leaving Josh Hart open on purpose, Hart helping off him so Jarrett Allen could stay near the rim, crowd the paint, and shut down driving lanes. The message was clear. Josh Hart is the guy we're willing to live with. And for most of Game 1, that strategy actually worked. Hart finished that game shooting just 1 for 5 and ended up a brutal -23. Late in the game, the Knicks made a huge adjustment by taking him off the floor completely. That opened up more spacing around Jalen Brunson, and suddenly Brunson had room to hunt mismatches and attack the middle without defenders packed into the paint. That switch completely changed the game and dragged New York back from the edge. Landry Shamet became the surprise spark in that closing lineup, and he delivered in a huge way. He went 3 for 3 from deep, finished +25, and drilled the game-tying shot during one of the craziest playoff comebacks we've seen in years. So even though New York escaped with the win, the Josh Hart problem was still hanging over the series. That's why heading into Game 2, Cleveland had every reason to stick with the same plan. Their defense looked strong for most of Game 1, and the Knicks clearly weren't going to bench Hart permanently. Plus, the numbers backed it up. Before this game, Hart was shooting just 26.7% from 3 during the playoffs. The Cavs looked at the stats, looked at the tape, and basically said, yeah, we're daring him again. At first, it looked like the exact same movie all over again. Hart missed a couple early shots, and Cleveland kept sagging off him like they didn't respect the jumper at all. But this time, something changed. Josh Hart never stopped shooting. He didn't hesitate, didn't pass up looks, didn't let Cleveland turn him into a bystander. He kept firing anyway, and eventually the Cavs paid for it badly. The same gamble that worked earlier suddenly started blowing up in their face. And this is where Cleveland's whole defensive setup starts getting messy. They need extra help near the basket because asking guards to survive one-on-one against Jalen Brunson all game is dangerous business. Brunson keeps hunting matchups, keeps getting downhill, and once the defense collapses, everything opens up for New York. That's the scary part for Cleveland right now. The Knicks are starting to solve every adjustment the Cavs throw at them. Because of that, Cleveland desperately needs Jarrett Allen protecting the rim and sliding over to help on Jalen Brunson. That's the entire setup of their defense. But the second you pull Allen toward Brunson, somebody gets left open. And if that somebody is Josh Hart and he's suddenly knocking down threes, now the Cavs have a serious problem on their hands. The tough part is that it's not as simple as saying, fine, let's just guard Hart tighter. We've already seen how dangerous that can get. Back in the 2024 playoffs against Philadelphia, the Sixers started the series doing the exact same thing. They ignored Hart, dared him to shoot, and it completely backfired once he started hitting shots. Suddenly, Philly had to guard him honestly, and the second that happened, Jalen Brunson got more room to attack. And once Brunson got space, it was over. He dropped 167 points across a 4-game stretch and completely shut the door on the 76ers. That's the trap Cleveland is walking into right now. Leave Hart open and you're gambling with disaster. Tighten up on Hart and now Brunson gets cleaner matchups against defenders he loves attacking. Either way, somebody is getting cooked. That's why Cleveland kept playing with danger in Game 2. They saw what happened late in Game 1 when they couldn't help off anyone. But with Hart back in the starting lineup, they rolled the dice again anyway. This time, Josh Hart made them regret every second of it. Hart exploded for 26 points, 7 assists, 2 steals, and 5 made threes. It was a playoff career high in scoring for him, and the first time a Knicks player had put up those numbers in the postseason since John Starks. Massive response after all the criticism from Game 1. And sure, a couple of those shots looked absolutely wild. One play had Hart spinning through traffic in the paint, throwing up an off-balance shot near the end of the clock that somehow dropped through anyway. But ugly or not, those baskets crushed Cleveland's defense and completely changed the feel of the game. But Hart was only the beginning of Cleveland's problems, because once the Cavs started hesitating about helping off him, the entire Jalen Brunson situation became even harder to control. And this was the second major way New York beat Cleveland. Brunson turned every defensive adjustment into the wrong answer. Honestly, that's what made this game so scary for the Cavs. It wasn't even some unstoppable Brunson scoring explosion early on. Cleveland actually got a lot of what they wanted in the first half. Jarrett Allen was dominating the offensive boards. Evan Mobley came out aggressive. Karl Anthony Towns had to battle through a physical double-big matchup. And Brunson? He was almost invisible as a scorer. At halftime, Brunson had just 2 points. After he dropped 38 in Game 1, Cleveland probably felt great seeing him so quiet offensively. But here's the problem. The Knicks never fell apart. Josh Hart kept attacking. Mikal Bridges kept making winning plays. Towns had stretches where he bullied his way to the rim over and over. OG Anunoby was everywhere defensively, making life difficult on every possession. So even with Brunson barely scoring, Cleveland still couldn't fully take control of the game. Then the third quarter happened, and everything flipped fast. The Cavs tied the game early, and for a brief second, it felt like momentum was finally swinging their way. The crowd got nervous, Cleveland looked energized, and it almost felt like the series was about to reset. Then Brunson buried a 3, and suddenly the Knicks exploded on an 18-0 run. Josh Hart kept pouring it on. Madison Square Garden erupted, and just like that, the game completely slipped away from Cleveland. That's what makes this Knicks team so dangerous right now. Brunson doesn't have to force shots from the opening tip anymore. He stays calm, trusts his teammates, lets the defense slowly crack, and then attacks once the openings finally appear. By the time Cleveland realized what was happening, the game was already spinning out of control. Then the fourth quarter arrived, and Cleveland's defense completely lost the plot again. After everything that happened in Game 1, you would think the Cavs would have spent every second preparing a clear defensive plan for Jalen Brunson late in games, either fully commit to trapping him or stay attached to shooters and live with tough one-on-one shots. Pick a lane. You've got 2 real options against Brunson. Blitz him aggressively and force the ball out of his hands, or avoid the switches as much as possible and let your best perimeter defenders battle him straight up. But what you absolutely cannot do is sit in between those 2 ideas. And somehow, that's exactly what Cleveland kept doing. Just look at James Harden on some of these possessions. He's stuck floating in no man's land. He's not close enough to pressure Brunson, but he's also abandoning his own man at the same time. The result was complete confusion all over the floor. On one possession, Mikal Bridges gets a wide-open short mid-range jumper because nobody rotates properly. Then, right after that, Bridges ends up completely alone in the corner for an easy 3 because Cleveland's defense looked totally scrambled. Those are the moments where people watching the game were probably yelling at the screen asking, "What are they doing?" Because if the Cavs want to help on Brunson, then fully help. Commit to it. Rotate hard. Force somebody else to beat you. And if the plan is to stay home on shooters, then stay disciplined and make Brunson hit difficult shots over defenders. But this half-help, half-standing around approach was a disaster. Cleveland basically handed Brunson the perfect setup. He could either attack isolated defenders one-on-one or calmly kick the ball out to wide-open teammates whenever the defense got confused. That's a nightmare combination against a player this smart. And somehow, after the collapse in Game 1, things actually looked worse in Game 2. This matchup is becoming brutal for Cleveland because their preferred Brunson defenders are guys like Dean Wade, Max Strus, or Dennis Schroeder. But when the game tightens up late, the Cavs also want their main core players on the floor: Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley, Donovan Mitchell, and Harden. That creates a huge problem. It means Cleveland only really has room for one perimeter defender they trust against Brunson during closing time, and Brunson knows it. The second he gets a switch onto almost anybody else, New York sees it as an advantage immediately. That's the trap Cleveland can't escape right now. Leave Brunson isolated, and he can explode like he did in Game 1 when he dropped 38 points and dragged the Knicks back from the dead. Send aggressive help, and suddenly he turns into a playmaker, carving up the defense with passes everywhere. In Game 2, he finished with a playoff career-high 14 assists, which was the most by a Knicks player in the postseason since 1998. And the worst option of all is what Cleveland actually did late in this game, neither helping properly nor staying home properly. They basically left Brunson standing in the middle of the floor and hoped the possession would somehow sort itself out. Against elite playoff guards, that's asking for trouble. What makes this even scarier for Cleveland is that Brunson barely scored in the first half, and the Knicks still won by 16 points. That's the part that changes the entire feeling around this series. This no longer looks like one bad defensive performance or a couple unlucky stretches. This is starting to look like a full-on matchup nightmare. Cleveland simply does not have enough reliable answers for Brunson, especially when New York's closing lineup starts spacing the floor properly and forcing defensive decisions. Every adjustment Cleveland tries seems to create another weakness somewhere else, and right now, the Knicks are exposing all of it. At some point, Kenny Atkinson may have to make a brutal decision and seriously consider sitting James Harden during key late-game stretches. That sounds harsh, but right now his playoff performances simply haven't justified automatic closing minutes, especially with how rough the defense has looked. Cleveland keeps getting exposed in crunch time, and teams are targeting those weak spots over and over again. Then you get to the third way New York has beaten Cleveland, and honestly, this might be the biggest problem of the entire series. The Knicks look like a team that fully understands who they are. Game 1 was the kind of loss Cleveland could have talked themselves out of. They probably left that game thinking, "We blew it." Brunson caught fire. Landry Shamet suddenly turned into a flamethrower, and New York pulled off one of the craziest comeback wins we've ever seen. From the Cavs' perspective, there was at least a way to explain it away. They could tell themselves they controlled most of the game for 3 quarters, and that if they stayed focused for a full 48 minutes in Game 2, they'd be fine. That's probably what made Game 2 so alarming. Because this time there was no miracle comeback story. The Knicks simply looked like the better basketball team. That changes everything psychologically. Suddenly, this doesn't feel fluky anymore. It feels real. Josh Hart went from nearly getting played off the floor in Game 1 to dropping a career playoff performance in Game 2. Jalen Brunson followed up a wild 38-point rescue act with a completely different kind of performance, 19 points and 14 assists, while controlling the entire flow of the game like a veteran quarterback reading defenses. And then there's Mikal Bridges, who has completely flipped his postseason around in dramatic fashion. Early in the playoffs, Bridges looked uncomfortable and out of rhythm. Through the first 5 games of Round 1, the jumper just wasn't falling and the confidence didn't look fully there. But over the last 7 games, he's been averaging 18.7 points per game on an absurd 76% true shooting percentage. Those numbers are outrageous for playoff basketball. Now, it's no longer just Brunson dragging the Knicks across the finish line every night. Hart is stepping up. Bridges suddenly looks like the elite player New York traded 5 first-round picks to get. Karl Anthony Towns continues giving them steady production even in a difficult matchup against Cleveland's front court. And OG Anunoby looked way sharper defensively and offensively compared to Game 1. Everything is starting to click for New York at the perfect time. One of the biggest differences between these first 2 games showed up in the passing numbers. In Game 1, the Knicks finished with only 20 assists on 42 made field goals. They were surviving mostly off chaos, tough shot making, and pure effort. But in Game 2, New York recorded 32 assists on 44 made baskets. The ball movement looked clean again. The offense flowed naturally. Players trusted each other, made quick decisions, and attacked Cleveland from multiple angles instead of relying on isolation basketball every possession. That's the version of the Knicks that should seriously worry Cleveland. Now, to be fair, the Cavaliers are not finished yet. They're heading back home, where they've been much stronger throughout the playoffs. And if you look back at the previous round, they also dropped the first 2 road games against Detroit before eventually battling back to win the series in 7 games. But this situation feels completely different. The Knicks are a far more dangerous and complete team than that Pistons squad. And after the emotional collapse from Game 1, this series almost feels mentally heavier than a normal 2-0 deficit. That comeback looked like it drained something out of Cleveland emotionally, and Game 2 only made the pressure worse. That's the part that could really haunt the Cavaliers moving forward, the mental side of all this. Because if New York steals even one of these next 2 games in Cleveland, the Knicks might already have one foot in the NBA Finals.